Good morning in Latin America and the Caribbean. Good evening in the UAE and all the GCC countries. Thank you very much for being with us today. We would like to thank you for joining us for the 33rd edition of the Annual Investment Meeting webinar series and third session for the Latin America chapter. Today, we are presenting the future of investment in Latin America and the Caribbean. My name is Astrid Chedid, Regional Director for Latin America, the Caribbean, and Spain, and I'll be your MC for today. The Annual Investment Meeting is an initiative from the Ministry of Economy of the United Arab Emirates. It is an investment platform whose mission is to provide an opportunity to project developers from emerging markets to showcase their endeavors in front of investors from all over the world, based on 6 pillars: foreign direct investment, foreign portfolio investment, small and medium enterprises, startups, future cities, and One Belt, One Road. A premier 3-day investment-focused event is organized every year in Dubai in order to provide an appropriate space for the participants from the public and private sectors from around the globe to learn, discuss, exchange views and experiences about investment trends, and also schedule G2B and B2B meetings with institutional, corporate, and individual high net worth individuals seeking lucrative and reliable projects for their capital. The event also includes workshops, exhibition, investment awards, and networking functions. This year, a virtual version of the annual investment meeting is going to take place from October 20th to October 22nd. During Digital AIM, important stakeholders from the international investment community will gather to share their ideas about how to tackle the challenges the world is currently facing and to continue creating investment opportunities amidst this crisis. For Digital AIM, we will be using the same platform we're occupying for this event. I hope that once the session is done, you can explore the exhibition room, where our panelists have arranged to have booths with information from their organization, and even ECLAC has in their booth a new publication that has been released recently. Just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. If you experience any issues with your audio or video during the webinar, just refresh your browser and that should take care of everything. We would suggest that using Chrome, Firefox, or Opera. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in the control panel on the right side of your screen. If you like to make a specific question, just mention the name of the speaker. I am sure that you will enjoy using this new technology that will make you feel as close as possible to an actual physical event, as you can also build contacts, chat, and make video calls with other participants. Just click on the networking tab. In today's webinar, our speakers will have a crucial discussion on the future of investment in Latin America and the Caribbean. They will highlight the main areas where there are opportunities for investments, share ideas about the challenges for the region after COVID-19, and speak about the perspectives about how investment can contribute to promoting innovation, as well as sustainable and inclusive development. I would like to introduce you to the moderator for today's webinar, Mr. Mario Chimoli, who is Deputy Executive Secretary of the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean of the United Nations since 2018. He is also Chief of the Division of Production, Productivity, and Management, and Officer in charge of the Division of International Trade and Integration. He is the co-chair, along with Giovanni Dossi and Joseph Stiglitz, of 2 of the task forces, Industrial Policy and Intellectual Property Right Regimes for the Development, of the Initiative of Policy Dialogue at Columbia University in New York. A PhD in economics from the University of Sussex, his research deals with development paths, economic growth, and its relationship with the productive structure and international trade. His work examines the interconnection between industrial policy, technological development, and innovation. Thank you very much for being with us today. He'll be joined by a panel of experts. Ms. Yvonne Cuello, she is the CEO of the Association for Private Capital Investment in Latin America, LAVCA, a nonprofit membership organization comprised of over 190 firms that control assets in excess of 65 billion USD dollars, directed at capitalizing and growing Latin America businesses. Members include the most active private equity, venture capital, real estate, and infrastructure funds, as well as family offices, sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, and other private capital investors. We also have with us Mr. Jamal Arjarwan, who is Secretary General of UAE International Investors Council since 2014. He holds a Bachelor's of Science degree in Business Administration from the University of Dayton, Ohio, USA, a degree in Executive Management from IMD School, Business School, Switzerland, and a degree in Leadership Strategy from Tuck School of Business, Dartmouth University, New Hampshire, USA. His career started in Etisalat, Emirates Telecommunications Corporation in 1988. In 1996, he joined Thuraya Telecommunication company where he served as the company's chief commercial officer, designing and executing the overall business strategy and managed the company's commercial operations division worldwide. He returned to Etisalat in 2006 to establish and lead the International Investment Division as Chief Executive Officer for International Investments. In 2011, he became the Chief Regional Officer leading Etisalat operation in the Asia region. We also have with us Mr. Martin Umaran, co-founder and chief of staff of Globant, one of Argentina's unicorns. As a co-founder of Globant, Mr. Martin Umaran has been responsible for ensuring Globant's growing capacity and broadening global reach. He coordinates and supports executives in daily projects and acts as a liaison to senior management within the company. He's also responsible for Globant's mergers and acquisitions, which combined with the company's organic growth has resulted in Globant's expansion to 16 countries. Martin has extensive experience in business and operations management for the technology and logistics industries. Alongside the other Globant co-founders, Martin was elected as an Endeavor Entrepreneur in 2005. He holds a degree in mechanical engineering from the National University of La Plata and a master's in business administration from IDEA University. Federico Tafja, who's also with us today, is currently executive advisor at Invest Chile, the foreign investment promotion agency of the government of Chile. He graduated cum laude from Los Andes University in Chile and LLM ESADE Business School in Barcelona, Spain. He has more than 15 years of experience in banking, corporate and international business law, with strong networking and negotiation skills, as well as an extensive experience in Chile, China, Spain, and the United States, especially regarding offshore multi-jurisdictional transactions, foreign and domestic businesses, taxation, and treaties. Alejandro Rodriguez is founder of and CEO of Morpho Capital Partners, a private equity investments platform built to produce massive value by backing up scalable and sustainable businesses. Morpho focuses on technology-enabled businesses in 4 primary sectors: financial services, education, health and wellness, and the food industry. Alejandro has been a private equity investor for over 15 years, deployed over $600 million in Latin America, actively participating in boards and funds and companies and helping them grow through corporate governance, development, mergers and acquisitions, financing structures, and strategic advice. Without further ado, we will turn the time over to our wonderful speakers. Mr. Mario Chimoli, please come on stage.
Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you to my friends on the other side of the world that are organizing this meeting also in this digital platform. I want to send a particular regards to the friend Jamal Arjarwan, that is the person indicated and dedicated in the government to coordinate the efforts of this meeting and to have this continuous, I think, historical point and historical moment on the debate on foreign direct investment. I think it's an important initiative. It's an important initiative because we believe in globalization, we believe in investment, we think that this is a crucial moment and important. I want to say hello to all of the participants of the meeting. For me, it's very important to moderate this panel and to have all of you on board on this initiative. And I want to be very, very directly, because we don't have more time, but I want to be to introduce the debate. You know that it is important to put clearly on the point the debate and to have clearly what's happening in the region. You know the data of the region. The data of the region are not so good. They are not so good for many parties around the world. We know that. Our estimates say that the GDP is going to decrease about -9% in the region, having an enormous impact on labor market, on poverty, on inequality. That is an important point to have in your mind. I think many of you that are in firms, that are in organizations, know that this is an important issue. And also we are going to have an enormous impact on production system. We are going to have an enormous impact on production. ECLAC has estimated that more or less about 2,080,100 small and medium firms in the formal sector have to close the activity, because the impact on supply side, on the demand side, is going to be really important. It's going to be transversal in the production system and countries. In this context, we have UNCTAD have estimated recently about the impact on foreign direct investment. And the news are not so good, because the foreign direct investment is going to decrease. We said about the 30 and 40% in the region. This is the data that we have to have in our mind to understand that this process is going to be very complex to recover again. But however, I think this initiative is coming in a very important moment. Why? Because this region needs to build it back better. What does it mean? We need to build it back in production structure, in capability in technology, in employment, in new technology that have to support employment, productivity, and growth in the region. I think the panel that we have is really great in that sense. It is really important. In this initiative, putting back the International Investor Council, where Jamal is president, is the secretary of that, is putting the attention on high technology and important technology. I think it's an important meeting for that. That is the data for the region. Investment is going to decrease, clearly. And I want to be very honest with you. We need to transform the production structure. Why? Because we need to incorporate more formal activity. People, employment in important sector that can create formal activity. That's what that means. It means that employment have to be with more productivity, with more technological capability, and so on and so on. We need probably to transform also the incentives to attract more foreign direct investment. Why? Because in this condition, we are going to expend a lot of increase in expenditure in fiscal policy and so on. And we need also some complementarity between state and private activity, an alliance of that give the possibility of the region to attract new investments in new sector and new capabilities. And I want to be very, very directly with that. I want to hear each of you on that. What is important for that, and to give the message of the region. Of course, this condition, this moment is difficult, but how each of you think about is going to be the next future? Where is going to recover investment, foreign direct investment? It's going to recover in new sector. There is a new opportunities. And second, if countries have to attract them, what is the best policy to do that? I think in this panel, we have one of the most important investors, that is the state of UAE, that really have played an important role. But we have friends and associations that can understand for the side of the region, of the Latin America, what are the most important incentives. We believe that in this new building back better, we need new incentive, new policies, new new capabilities to attract and to create this, this alliance in the long term between the state, market, and investment that have to be the basis for the building back better in the region. That is an important point. Foreign direct investment has to play a crucial role. You have to put this as a policy, a central policy for the state in the region. I want to begin with our friend Jamal Jarwan, that he is the Secretary of General of the UN International Investment Council. And I would like to hear, Jamal, sorry that I call like that, what is the view that you have the new futures? How is going to be the new scenario? How is going to be the new processes? You think that something is changing? How your country and your region can play an important role for Latin American countries? How we can create this international community, this new globalization process where the basis has to be foreign direct investment? Please, Jamal, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, let me convey my regards from the United Arab Emirates, and really I wish everybody who's listening to this important session and that we take away a few thinkings and new thoughts for a very good question, Mr. Chairman, you have asked what the future is holding for us. Maybe, Mr. Chairman, I want to spend a few moments to describe how my country has been handling the current pandemic, COVID-19. In spite of the tough circumstances in the business environment globally and even regionally, my country has been able to stand strong in spite of the difficulties the various economies around the world have been facing. No doubt, this is a global pandemic, has hit every single economy around the globe. We, however, want to shed light on the positivity of how we have been able to sustain and activities I described today as a stable business condition in spite of the tough situation that we've been all economically worldwide facing. And that is due because of, not because we're emotionally attached and everybody's attached to his countries and being nationalism is increasing in the time of pandemic, but we had, luckily, I can say, had prepared long way back, where we have diversified our economy, not depending totally on the oil and gas economy. In fact, oil and gas, which has always been described as our main source of revenue for the United Arab Emirates, but in the past 50 years journey, we have managed to diversify. And I believe diversifications in the economy has paid well in terms of survivability in the United Arab Emirates in the recent months. I've been here witnessing how we've been able to go through very tough situations, but we've been able in the same time with the wise leadership that we have gone through. So far, we are sailing quite satisfactory. My country, when it comes to the FDI, we are very encouraging nations when it comes to FDI inflow and FDI outflow. In terms of numbers, I could say, according to the UNCTAD, UAE still score #1 in terms of ranking regionally as #1 attraction for the foreign investors. We've been able to sustain this #1 position in the past 10 to 12 years, just because, as you rightly said, Mr. Chairman, is the wise policy that we have introduced. In fact, we have liberated more than 122 sectors for 100% ownership to foreigners. And I think this has been paying off quite well and satisfactory to our FDI ranking globally. However, we still believe the potential to grow is there. When it comes to FDI outflow, I can convey this message to you today and our audiences that UAE as well has scored #1 in terms of FDI outflow regionally. And that has been a heritage that we've been undertaken for the past 45 years, exporting capital in more than 70 nations around the world. So UAE, in a lump sum, I could say in summarized way, and just due to the time, has been able quite strongly to sustain its position regionally and globally in Asia and Africa, whereas the population surrounding UAE more than 2 billion inhabitants. And we've been ranking as #1 touristic destination for the neighboring countries in both in Africa and Asia. I believe strongly the toughness and in spite of the circumstances we are all facing, UAE has been able to so far to sustain its position, but we have a lot of work to be done. In case in point, Mr. Chairman, I may give examples recently. Our government has restructured its organizational structure to cope with COVID-19, whereby have emphasized quite largely and most importantly identified digital economy as the future that we need to continue emphasizing and investing in. Definitely, without doubt, digital economy has become today the talk of many nations, the talk of many ministries. We have created a ministry to tackle the future of digital economy for the United Arab Emirates. And additionally, I can also convey to you that manufacturing is an important pillar in our governmental day-to-day business, where we created as well a ministry to undertake the duties to enhance and uplifting our manufacturing capabilities. Can go on and talk in my speech this morning at your end this evening in United Arab Emirates. In a lump sum, I could say UAE has been active during the pandemic. I can convey 2 transactions that we had undertaken during COVID-19. Back in June and July, we have transacted a multi-billion-dollar transaction through 2 of our sovereign wealth fund, that is Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, ADIA, which is considered #3 worldwide sovereign wealth fund globally. And secondly, Mubadala is another second sovereign wealth fund that also undertook transactions more than $1 billion during COVID-19. We are active. We will continue to be active in the FDI. It is a tough time, Mr. Chairman. You have categorically well described and pinpoint the drop in the FDI, no doubt about that. However, I can also say positively, Dubai as a city has been also ranking among the top 3 worldwide globally as an attractive FDI destinations. Definitely our capital city as well, Abu Dhabi, is playing a greater role in the oil and gas and had concluded recently in Galaxy transaction for more than $10 billion deal with foreign investors. I'm glad that we, in spite of difficulties, strength comes out of difficulties. UAE has been performing more than satisfactorily, Mr. Chairman. I can convey as well our desire and our interest to target Latin America as a destination for our investment. We've been recent trip to Mexico, we've been as well in Colombia. We have investments in Brazil and as well in other countries in Latin America. But we are serious and determined to make sure our presence in Latin America is considerably large. With this note, Mr. Chairman, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. UAE, just to finalize one more point, UAE is considered #2 economy in the Arab world. Although it's geographically sized reasonably, but in terms of economic performance and FDI specifically, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, we're doing a great job. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Really, I want to, I think you put clearly what is an important dialogue that we have here, because you put, I want to collect four important points that you said. First of all, you say FDI is really important for diversification. That's an important issue for Latin American economies. It's music for my heart. It's music for these countries. Second, you put clearly manufacturing sector, but not the manufacturing sector in the old mode of produce manufacturing products, the new manufacturing processes. That is quite a laboratory, it's quite a more complex process between production of things and services and technology. It's a more complex process. Diversification, manufacturing, and you put clearly an important sector, digital economy. These are 3 points that really we have to create a debate, create a dialogue between UAE and Latin American countries. I think this is a really important point, because I want to put the 4th point that you see. We create a magnificent process to attracting new investing on the sector. And there you have an important experience to discuss, to dialogue with the different Latin American countries. And I want to put clearly to my friend Martin. Martin, first of all, you are the first. You are a good experience, you are the important case, and I think you have any country where you put clearly an important and maintaining life the importance of manufacturing sectors. And we have similar, some unicorns there that are maintaining an important position. I want to ask to you, this issue about diversification, digital economy, manufacturing, and capability of trade, how you see that this we have to implement that policy, which are the important turning point, which is the driver for that, how we can transform the process in the region, and how the firms of the sector where you stay have to look at these processes. You have the floor, Martin, please.
Thank you, Mario. Thank you, Jamal. Thank you. It's like a war going like in two speeds, you know. One, you have the war that this COVID crisis is showing that everything that is digital is growing like it's growing a lot. It's quite important, you know, for the future of the economy being digital. On the other side, everything related to the old way of producing goods, you know, and services is going very slow or with a lot of problems. So we are seeing that being digital is not just, it needs a lot of infrastructure, needs a lot of talent, we need a lot of education, and we need to modernize the whole society in a way. You know? It's just, you know, because what we are gonna have is to have like islands, you know, in countries where you have big companies doing what the work is work, that digital work, and on the other side, the old one, you know, with very old labor laws and things like that that are not, you know, are not aligned what the world is looking for. So what we are seeing is like the world in two tracks in very different speeds. And I think that in Latin America we have demonstrated that we have amazing entrepreneurs that can definitely be at the same level as the best in the world. And I think that if we can help that environment in Latin America, we can definitely succeed in that. We have a young population, and that's very important, you know, it's easy to educate young people than to educate old ones. So we have an opportunity, if we invest in that talent, to foster that digital economy in Latin America.
Are you there, Martin?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, now yes. Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
I don't know how much I said, you know, because I think I was talking alone. No, I'm saying that, you know, in Latin America, we have a very young population, and
yes,
young people is much easier to educate than the older one. So we have an opportunity to educate that people into the digital world. And I think that we need to foster, you know, the education of that people and to invest in that, you know, to promote that digital world that is what the world is demanding at this moment.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Martin. And before that I leave you, I want to ask you, of course, that is important. Human capital really is important. But if you want, for example, country where you have to support, because Jared said clearly, we need to transform the production structure. This is the policy also. You need only with talent, or you need also some industrial policy to attract new investment. What is your view about that?
Oh, definitely. You know, it's even when we know that they invest, you always invest in entrepreneurs. You are not investing in a country. But if you don't have the right environment to invest, you don't want to invest in that entrepreneur because the ecosystem is not prepared for that. So I think that we need to enhance the laws and the ecosystem to foster that innovation. And you know, sometimes we are seeing that our countries are more interesting in see how wealthy are the entrepreneurs instead of see how much work are these entrepreneurs generating in the countries. You know, I think that we need to improve that ecosystem, and we need to generate the environment to let that investment coming to our countries. Definitely, we need both. You know, it's impossible to, you know, you can't have a generation of entrepreneurs of companies of the new economy. Fashion.
Okay, thank you very much, Martin. I think you put clearly ecosystem, human capital, to create an environment to develop entrepreneurs. That is an important point to create a link to foreign direct investment, clearly to create a platform on that. But I want to give the floor to Yvonne Coelho, and I have a question for you. And how you see the same question? How do you think that is the policy that we need? You have Martin put clearly, which is the new ecosystem that you need to attract new foreign investment, taking in our mind that we need in the countries more productivity, more diversification, more manufacturing, more technology. What is your view? What is those parameters? Which is the view, which instrument we have to put in act to obtain this type of policy? Yvonne, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mario, and thank you for the invitation. And taking a step back and very much in line with what Martin mentioned, yes, definitely. I think this crisis is accelerating the need of technology and the digitalization of the companies. We've seen how the entrepreneurs in Latin America have shown resiliency through these cycles. We've seen in our numbers as LAFCA, we've been tracking all the private capital investments that goes into Latin America from both local and international fund managers, going from all the way early stage fund managers like venture capital fund managers all the way through late stage. And we see a lot of international fund managers coming into the regions, which are also part of FDI flows coming into the region through these type of vehicles that capitalize directly the companies. We've seen, as Mr. Jamal was saying, Mubadala, ADIA, the foreign sovereign wealth funds and Canadian pension funds and long-term investors putting money into the region and encouraging is precisely because they see the opportunity. Now, in terms of what is happening in terms of technology, in particular in VC investments, we've seen that number doubling since 2016. We started receiving $500 million from venture capital funds going into startups in Latin America in 2006. Last year, we closed at 4.6 billion, which is being consistent, doubling down. This year, we're about to publish our mid-year data. We still see a lot of investment coming into the region, of course, lower than last year. We might close in general for private equity, real assets and venture capitals around 5 billion compared to around the 3.5 from last year, but it's still showing the resiliencies of these startups and these companies in Latin America. So it's a big effort that the governments have been doing for many, many years. It's not something that suddenly, because of the pandemic, now the governments are starting to focus their efforts in incentivizing ecosystems, startup ecosystems. This is an effort that we've seen in Chile, in Colombia, in Mexico, Peru, Brazil, Argentina, all across the different countries in the region of how to incentivize those startup ecosystems, how to make the entrepreneurs their life easier and encourage them the creation of new companies. I think that now more than ever, policies need to be aligned. There's a lot of new technologies and a lot of new sectors and opportunities that are coming, like for example, fintech, health tech, how we're gonna regulate those sectors, like even logistics, the whole thing about the Ubers and the transportation, how the governments are gonna start regulating and how the governments in terms of human capital, in terms of the technology, the infrastructure, we need to build more infratech, expand the cable access into the regions and different countries, expand fiber optics. So there are a lot of many efforts that needs to accompany all these new innovations that are coming into the region. But again, this is something that the governments, I believe, in terms of taking each of the sectors, really incentivizing what are the regulations that will accompany those growth in those sectors are key and important. I think the effort that they already made in terms of investing government money into these type of vehicles in order to invest in startups and in these companies in the region, because we don't want the government to be stakeholders of these startups and the companies. That's why we have, the private capital vehicles that could capitalize all those companies. And the efforts that the different governments has put there is being on a good direction. But again, the policies around the regulations in each of the sectors that are innovating very fast need to put in place in order to encourage more developments and more growth in each of the sectors. We have shown resiliency through these couple of months of COVID-19.
Thank you, Ivo. I think you put clearly, and this is very important to complement, how to regulate, for example, logistics, how to regulate, for example, infrastructure, how to regulate sectors, different sectors. Today, services is a sector where people are thinking a lot about competition policy, for example, that all of the sectors need to be rethinking about that. And the question is you think that that this is the only variable that we need in an ecosystem, and how you feel that this alliance between public and private have to be rebuild it or build it up to have a better result? How you think it is the of co-regulation, but how you see this political alliance between private, public, and state to create those incentives?
I think that there is definitely needs to be a coordination between the public, the private and public partnerships, and the coordination and dialogue between the private and the public sector, because these are sectors and these are companies that are coming out. This is disrupting, a lot of the markets and the way that things were done in different sectors. So one is in terms of the human capital labor force. As we mentioned, as Martin mentioned, education is really important. Having the resources available to especially the startups when they are in an early stage, they need a lot of capital, and financing of those startups is basically impossible in most of the countries. Like when a startup company wants to start their businesses, the traditional banks don't lend money because they don't have assets against, because it's a new idea. So providing those resources, financing resources through the government development banks, in terms of making sure that these companies are able to be viable in the long term. The facility of creating a company and regulatory and taxes around like the legal structure in terms of how to facilitate those companies, encouraging those ecosystem and that public and private partnerships, the associations, the role of the local associations in terms of dialoguing with the government and making sure that we are there with the right incentives in terms of the public incentives in order to push those companies forward. I think it has to be, and also the universities, it has to be a dialogue between the university, the public sector, the private sectors, where they work together in terms of making the best, because one of the big challenges that we have and that we have taken into consideration is our social problems that we have in Latin America. So making sure that with all this innovation, also the government, you are accessing new populations in FinTech. We are giving more financial services to unbanked populations. So the social aspect is also really, really important. How we are measuring those new, for example, linking the university with the private sector and the public sector. To make an example, we need more talents in IT or web development. How the university, the private sector, and the public sector are going to work together in order to allow more careers or more formation in the human capital needed for these new companies that are starting to develop and grow, and those new opportunities that are coming. So that, for example, education, one angle, as I was mentioning, regulation around, because sometimes we see a new company that launches and then there is a law that says, no, that is not a sector that is regulated, so we have to shut it off. So avoiding that, working together in order to avoid those unexpected changes down the road. And then, as I was mentioning before, going back to the ecosystem needs different dimensions. So we need the financial angle, we're helping the company to build in. You need the education and the human capital angle. You need the collaboration among the entrepreneurs and the companies. And you need, of course, the support from the public government in terms of facilitating the creation of the companies, the regulation around startups, new startups creation, etc. So it's a very important dialogue that, we have the local associations in each of the countries that can support it, but definitely it's a joint work, because there are many opportunities that are coming unexpected sectors and disrupting sectors that not even the government knows how to regulate them or how to manage them, or how to make sure we have the human capital available, or we have the right structures in order to make those new ideas live.
Thank you very much, Yvonne. Really important to, for example, I think the point that you put clearly, university and social side, that's crucial to create the more linkage between private sector, university, and science and technology policy. I suppose that has to be an important pillar for this, to build up this important ecosystem. Now, I looked at Federico that came from the country. We stay in the same country. We are the only that is staying the same time, probably. Hello, Federico. It's a pleasure to have you here also, and to have this question. And how you think that this ecosystem has to be incentivized in this new situation? Because we think also here in Chile that We understand that many parts of Latin America that investment is important to have people in formal activities. We need to create an informal sector to create better employment. We need to maintain the important trend that Chile has maintained for a long time. How for you, what your experiences in which are the new policies that you have to be put on board to establish the new ecosystem? Federico, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mario. And first of all, I would like to start thanking you and the Ministry of Economy of the UAE for this kind invitation. If I have to define our policy, I will say that we're constructing it upon 4 pillars. Escalation of infrastructure related to technology, to expand our connectivity, to improve the availability of human capital for the development of such technologies, and to focus on sectors where we see as a country competitive advantages, such as electromobility, clean energy, lithium, green hydrogen, and so forth. I think that also that before incentives or even policies, things like a non-discriminatory regulatory environment and the absence of administrative impediments to do businesses, stable macroeconomy, sufficient and accessible resources, including the presence of relevant infrastructure and human capital, will be considered again, I think, more important even than the incentives themselves. In that line of thought, offering what I've just mentioned, in our experience, investors also give relevance to other things, such as a network of free trade agreement, where tariffs and e-commerce chapters are included, double taxation agreement network to avoid double taxation, and of course, tax exemptions. In Chile, you can enjoy value-added tax exemptions in the import of capital goods, value-added tax exemption for the export of services, VAT refund, and of course, as well as subsidies. We have had experience in pre-investment studies execution subsidies, technological infrastructure implementation subsidies, specialized human capital recruitment and hiring subsidies, and the subsidies for activities associated to the development of supply programs. Also, as a basic understanding, we think that we need to do something as a country, and it's to start with a national strategy to promote FDI, aligned with regional governments. FDI with an impact on innovation, where research and development and technology have a very important place. FDI that develop capacities in our country. Of course, employment, suppliers, but also skills, which is very important. And as well as to avoid zero-sum competitors, especially at the level of regions in the same country, and to attract strategic investment according to the specialization and the competitiveness of each of the regions of each country. And that's in general what I think, Mario.
In your country, really, Chile, we have studied in ECLAC, we have produced in the document that you have downloaded here in this conference, but also in our reports, that also Chile and other countries, Mexico, also created a new policy in energy sector. And you put clearly that it is a state policy. It's not policy by one government, but was really a state policy at the meantime. Today, how you created those ecosystem to facilitate this policy in energy sector? That is an important one, new, that has to be with sustainability. That is another worry about, I think, all of the people that are in this conference. Please, Federica.
Sure. I think for taking that step, both private and public sectors agreed on such a policy, as well as to create an industry surrounding our competitive advantages, as I mentioned. we realized that Chile has one of the best radiation in the world, and that Chile had to comply with certain international agreements in order to reduce, for instance, CO2. And all of that created not only a policy, but a huge business that is growing at a fast pace. We are reducing, while we're reducing our CO2 exposure, we're increasing the construction of renewable energy projects, especially in the wind and solar fashion models. And that being said, that also creates the need of creating capabilities or human capital in order to support such initiatives. And we're doing so. There is a special program done by the government that is creating such human capital from local universities and in alliances with international schools as well. So all of that are also creating positive advantages and externalities for the business itself. So when the government, public sector, universities, and so forth come together and create a policy that everyone agreed upon, you will see the increment of such policy, and in terms of the businesses related to exactly that policy. And when that happens, it's easier to grow. You've seen how the materialization of very important projects in Chile has been happening for the past, let's say, 5 to 6 years. And that also created positive number for our FDI. Even during the pandemic that is affecting the world, the foreign direct investment in Chile is not only proving to be resilient, but also is continuing to grow. FDI actually increased by 53% in the first half of this year, and it was also 64% up on the average for the past 5 years. We know that these numbers are subject to change simply by the nature of this volatile context, and we are aware that the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, has indicated, as you mentioned before, that global flows might contract between 30 and 40% this year. But we still have numbers and positive numbers, and those numbers are pretty much related to the energy sector that you were mentioning before.
Point is a positive news that we have to build up, and this is important positive news because the ecosystem to this sector have produced an important results, not only in Chile but also in Mexico. There is experience important on there, and also other sector. Alejandro, this is your turn. I think I have the same question. How is the ecosystem? How we can create this constant ecosystem, particularly in Mexico, where you have a new trade agreement with the United States? And what do you think about if you have to think which is those policies, those variables, those sectors that introduce new technology, where clearly Mexico has an important manufacturing sector, clearly Mexico has an important creative diversification. How to strengthen these systems, processes, and have to be linked with the new large and broad trade agreement with the United States and Canada. I want to hear from you what is this view of ecosystem in Mexico. Please, Alejandro, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mario. And I'd like to take this opportunity as well to thank Astrid and the AIM conference team for inviting me and for organizing this panel. It's an honor to be here with this great panel. Thank you very much. I think, in general terms, the region, it's not only Mexico, but I think it's the case also in Chile, in Colombia, in Peru, in Brazil, has done a great job in the last 15 to 20 years in terms of implementing policies that foster direct investments into the region. Having an independent central bank, having prudent monetary and fiscal policies, setting the stage with clear rules for new businesses and new industries to foster, as Yvonne was mentioning. Many of these are new industries, new companies that are disrupting the ways things have been done in the past. And setting that stage from a policy standpoint, it's very important. And I think in many of these countries, the rules are clear and are stable for investors to make decisions based on those. And also, let's not forget how the pension fund system in the region has evolved over the last 10, 15, 20 years, starting with Chile, which was a great example, then Colombia, Peru, Brazil, Mexico followed. And today there is about $600 billion of assets in these pension funds, investing not only in the traditional fixed income and public equity listed markets, but also in long-term private companies and projects. So I think from a policy standpoint, from an private investor standpoint, the main thing for me about policy is providing a clear stage, providing stability and visibility. You can make your own decisions about how risky you want to be in a particular business or venture. But from a policy standpoint, what you want is visibility, is transparency, is predictability. Now, you were talking as well, or asking about the importance of the free trade agreement that we have just renewed with our partners in NAFTA, and how that affects the manufacturing sector, technology. And I think you touch a very important point. I mean, the economies in North America, Canada, the United States, and Mexico have highly integrated production lines and processes and it was very important to formalize that in this new agreement. And I think it was great news for the region that we eventually came up to a solution that we're working towards. And I think in terms of technology, for Mexico specifically, there are huge advantages in terms of what you can create in sectors like financial services, education, the healthcare system, which are sectors in which the population have not really received all the level of service that they need, and because of that, now with the technology-enabled business models, you can really kind of do a jump start or a frog leap in terms of bringing those services at the speed, at the quality, at the cost that the consumers in the middle class need them, without having to transform a huge infrastructure behind you. Just to give you an example, I mean, the fact that the Mexican financial system has only serves about 38% of the population, according to the World Bank. On the other hand, you have a 75% smartphone penetration, and that's a huge advantage, right? For many of these services, and disrupting the way you provide these services in these sectors, as I mentioned. So definitely, that's going to be a huge theme, I believe, in the next 5 to 10 years. I think it was something that was already happening. With the current pandemic situation, I think the digital world has taken another speed, as Martin was mentioning at the beginning, and I think that's going to revolutionize many of these sectors even quicker than we expected 6 months or a year ago.
Thank you, Alejandro. And in this context, I want to say to you, have you feel that what is your policy or your firms and group? Have you created to maintain this effort? You maintain this capability to attract and to create those ecosystems. What is your main policy on that? What are you doing in this context, particularly?
Well, I think, in my opinion, as a private investor, what attracts capital it's a scalable and sustainable business model. In my view, in this economy, it has to be a business model that's empowered by technology. And in Latin America or any other part of the world, international and local investors are looking for a risk reward that on a global basis makes sense. Now, from a policy standpoint, as I was mentioning, you need certainty that the rules are there and that the rules are not changing. And that is very, very important. And I think that's where Chile, Colombia, Peru, Brazil, and Mexico primarily, which are the countries that I've invested over the last 15 years and I know well. It doesn't mean that there's not another country that might be doing that, but in my point of view, those are the countries that over the last 2 decades have really set the stage for international investors to come in with that certainty, with that stability. It doesn't mean that you have assurance of whether an economy will grow or not, whether a particular company will be successful or not. But in my opinion, from a policy standpoint, having that certainty that there is a fiscal rule, there is a law that protects you, there is jurisdictions that work, there is the right structures in which you can invest. All of that from a policy standpoint, I think, and combined with the fact that now the most important local institutional investors, which are the pension funds in this region, are also putting their long-term capital to grow alongside international investors. For me as a private investor, myself, and representing other investors from other places in the world, that's the most important thing. And I think there's always room for improvement, but we have the stage, we have the capability, or we have at least the basis for taking those decisions based on the risk of the investment itself.
Thank you, Alejandro. I go to the second round, and I want to use also not the question that we have prepared for the meeting, but some of the questions that came from the floor. And I want to begin with our friend Jamal. And Jamal, how you can imagine, what is the scenario that you have in your mind to create a more strategic alliance between UAE and Latin American countries? Which are the sector? Which is the common basis for that? What is your view of your country on this process? Because you have an important role to promote in that. This is not only for your country, for the world as a connected world. How do you see these processes in terms of your country and Latin America? How you believe that the sector, the processes, the common ground, the drivers for that? Please, Jamal, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mario. Mr. Chairman, I think speaking about Latin America, one thing comes on my mind, tourism. Tourism is an important destination that I think something we can exchange with many Latin American. Alexander mentioned Chile, Peru, Colombia, so impressive. Mexico, unbelievably attractive destination for tourism. So definitely, tourism industry does represent to us a destination because there are various investment opportunities does exist in these 5-6 countries that I really share, Alexander, and I admire the way they are attracting FDI, and definitely agree with him. Certainty on policy is paramount priority for any investor prior going to any countries. So therefore, this is very important, where the 5-6 countries that mentioned by Alexander is definitely, they are heading the way. Second, telecommunication is a second sector that I believe we have done extremely well in the United Arab Emirates, where we have invested in MENA region, Middle East and North Africa, and invested in Asia as well, and done very well in telecom sector. Thirdly, I probably would say logistic. UAE enjoy a very strong brand. This is Dubai DB World, which manage about 70 to 80 ports around the world. A third sector that definitely I believe UAE has an appetite for is port management or logistic parks. Or number 4, probably renewable energy. UAE has been well known of being an oil and gas based economy in the beginning, not now, of course, it's only represent 30%. But we have gone very far in building expertise and capabilities, and something that we would consider investing, and we did invest in Brazil and other countries as well. I would probably mention, not necessarily in importance of sequence, but food security does represent an importance to UAE, especially after COVID, post-COVID-19. Food security is a priority and important to our nations, and because we do import 90% of our food from abroad. And UAE now is concentrating fully and securing its food strategically by having a storage for crisis like the one pandemic we faced, and looking for the next decade is to build up capabilities by using technology and food security. This is something very close to our heart in the United Arab Emirates. Other sectors, for example, tourism, I've covered quite well, in attracting tourists from Latin America to come to United Arab Emirates, because it is considered one of the most attractive destinations worldwide, be it business, be it health-wise. Mario, Mr. Chairman, UAE has a very advanced healthcare system. We have attracted the Cleveland Clinic and others, the reputable health organization from the United States of America. Now they are home. They are providing similar services. So UAE now considered to be a medical touristic destination. Those are the 5-6 sectors. Aviation. United Arab Emirates enjoy as well one of the most reputable airlines in the world. Emirates Airlines is now covering destinations to Latin America, North America, Europe, Africa, Asia, and Australia, and New Zealand. These are the sectors that comes to my mind, which we are eager to develop further. I can say and convey we have a strong appetite. UAE will continue to look at Latin America as a region of many attractions and many opportunities, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Jamal. Really an important intervention, because you put clearly telecommunication, tourism, logistics, ports, renewable energy, for security, health system, aviation. Many of these sectors, there is an enormous opportunity in our region. Many of these sectors are very important. All of these sectors has one point that is transversal of them: new technologies and digital technology. Clearly, it's playing important transversal to all of them. And I think you have an important point. For example, it was from yesterday that Chile began to open the competition and the introduction of 5G. This is transforming also the structure here. This, many of the countries in the region require an enormous intervention in new technology, what is about food security. Clearly an important point. Clearly this region has an enormous capability, and a line that is not only food because it's primary commodity, because food today is the relation between food, new technology, transportation, logistics, ICT. And you put clearly, I think 3, 4, 5, 7 sectors that clearly all of them has transversal ICT. And I think it's important to rethink. Also ECLAC, a thinking sector that creating an enormous debate for that. And I want to pass the floor to Martin. And Martin, I have the question for you. Have you think first of all, this sector are important and how you can create it as capability for the sector, and particularly also for your stream, that is important. Have you created and focus your firms on to the capability and new technology? Have you, because this sector, all of them related to new technology, have from your experience, your firm, you maintain the endeavors for this firm really strong, more than strong than what the world said about that. Please, Martin, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Mario. You know, when it's you know, the work to promote talent, you know, it's very linked to education. That's no way, you know. You need to, and education is usually something that the states are doing. You know, the states are the best providers in the world for education. Our role, you know, is to do that and to then do. I know that we have been doing a very good. Today we have more than on the world, not just in India, Romania, and in those countries are very similar. Nations are looking for the same all around the world.
I think we were lost. No, Martin, are you there? Please, we don't want to lose you. This is a good experience for one thing. Good.
I'm back. Now, hello.
Hello, I hear it from you. It's all right. Go ahead. We hear from you.
Okay. I was talking about our experience in India, for example. People say, "Oh, what are you doing there? I'm from Latin America, doing business in India. That's going to be a mess." And definitely, it's not what's happening. It's an amazing experience because young people in India is very similar to young people all around the world. So I think that's very good. You know, maybe for us who are older, you know, it's not that. For young generations, they're all cut by the same scissor. You know, they're all the same. So I think that that's amazing. So we are seeing that, you know, digital world is something that it's all around. It's the future of the world. And so we all the talent. So it means the role of the I think one importance and schools working together with companies to develop.
I think we lost Martin, and I go to pass to the next one, Yvonne, because when he's coming back, we can collect him at the end or the middle of the other intervention. Martin, we have you here. Are you ready? Are you there? I think that the connection is bad. I passed to Yvonne, and we maintain to maintain stabilize the connection with Martin.
I'm done. So I might go on.
Okay, Yvonne. And I have a question. I think this sector that Jamal put clearly on the table are very important, and you have the experience of private capital, and that's point with looking for your side, in those sectors for you, which are the more important incentive and regulation and probably competence policy that you need? Which are the policies? If you have to define, for example, 6 or 7 policies like the same sector, which are the specificity of this policy that you think this is needed? Also, in the idea that have you said many before that the social context is complex. Which are those policies specifically for those sectors that you think that are very important? Please, Simon, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mario. It is important to understand that for the private capital industry, these are vehicles that are normally constituted. They are constituted either locally in a country level or internationally to attract foreign investment into those vehicles, and then through those vehicles we make investments into our members, or our firms make investments into the startups or more developed companies in the case of private equity. So they are like two type of private capital. So we have like two main different strategies. One is, if we are calling about, I want to talk about. One is if we're talking about venture capital, which are early stage funds that invest in startups and early stage companies. It is important that the regulation is around how do we create those vehicles and how we attract investments from the LPs or institutional investment into those vehicles, and how we operate those vehicles and make those investments locally. It is super important for them in terms, like, one is the structure for VC, and then the second strategy that I was wanting to tell you is PE, private equity. So in private equity, we don't only have the structure of the vehicle per se, like for example, Fondo de Capital Privado in Colombia, or SERPI, or depending on the different markets, if you are talking about Mexico, if we're talking about Brazil, etc., like the regulation around those vehicles in order to make those investments. It's also important. And then the role of the local investors. So how do we incentivize, let's say on the private equity, the local pension funds are really being important investors in those vehicles, like allocating that capital into these funds in order to capitalize companies in each of the countries. So the regulation, then we will talk about how the regulation facilitate the regulation around the pension funds or insurance companies in order to allow the local investors in order to invest in this type of, in the private capital industry, and then of course invest in the portfolio companies at the company level. So I think Alejandro was mentioning a bit of it. In the private capital industry, we have the regulation around per se the vehicle, but it is also important the sectors in where those vehicles invest in. So when we talk about regulation, it all depends on the sectors. We're talking about a private capital that invests in infrastructure, then we talk about what is the vehicle that we're using, and then what is the regulation that we are using in terms of investing in infrastructure or renewable energy, et cetera, et cetera. In a private capital vehicle that invests in logistics, in consumer, in financial services, then we need to understand how are the rules of the game in terms of how we invest and we play in those sectors, etc. But at the end, general rule, the private capital, the rules around the vehicle per se, how to constitute, how to create and incentivize investors to get into these vehicles, to make commitments into these vehicles in order to capitalize those companies. I think it's key, and it's really important that each of the countries has a clear regulation around it that involves different layers and different aspects and how to operate, how they're being regulated, how the financials regulation between the fund manager, etc. So it could be a longer.
It's a complex process. Thank you very much. No, that's important what you said about that. I have only brief questions. Sorry, the time is go. And I have a question for Federico, for Alejandro. First of all, for Federico, I won't write a telegraphic answer because we have time, but not too much. And yesterday was there is what's called licitación of the 5G in Chile, and the sector that our friend Jamal said have to do a lot with the new infrastructure in digital. And I have the same question for Alejandro from Mexico, because Mexico is rethinking about the capability to introduce 5G, and there is a new process. Countries are thinking about that. What Federico said about this policy is important. Create the capability for those processes or not. We have a very brief. You have to be very telegraphic, but it's important that you give the experience of your country on that. Please, Federico.
Digital transformation and services related to it are accelerating and making an important contribution to our gross domestic product. At least something that we haven't seen before. And consequently, Chile is working in at least 3 main areas to boost that. To enhance international connectivity, to boost national digital highway, and the 5G development. 5G development is just a part of one of these 3 pillars to become a digital hub. In order to enhance international connectivity, we have to look to the private sector and to the public sector. To the public sector, there is a PPP, private to public partnerships. There is one submarine cable, which is the Asia-South America Digital Gateway Project, that is expected to be tendered by 2021, so next year, and is currently under feasibility studies that includes this PPP model that relates Chile and Brazil. And the route between Chile and Australia has been already selected. From the private sector, we can highlight at least 2 examples. Google with its Courier cable, that is a cable that connects LA, California with Valparaiso for over 10,000 kilometers. And there is another joint venture between América Móvil and Telefónica that will connect Guatemala with Valparaiso and having connection points in Ecuador, Peru, as well as in the north of Chile. From the national perspective, for the national digital highway, this approach will help us to get the most of the infrastructure in the future, especially with increasing needs for low latency and high availability of data. There is another cable up in the north. It's called the Prat cable, and another one down the south is the Austro Fiber cable. That is an initiative, a joint venture between a Chinese and a local Chilean company. In the 5G development, as you were asking, is a 5G public consultation of bidding rules just ended. The tender, as you said, has been published this month, and yesterday was this launch made by the president of Chile, President Piñera. This will translate into spread of connected devices and significant quality of service improvement. As a consequence, Chile is already a hub for over 20 data centers, probably having Sacenti, Huawei, Google, Amazon Web Services, Oracle, IBM, and Microsoft. So that being said, we have to consider not only 5G, but also the other initiatives that the government is boosting to become a digital hub for the region.
Thank you, Federico, very much. Thank you, Federico, very much. I think it's an important answer. And countries are preparing for that. And I want to hear from Alejandro. Infrastructure is becoming important processes, and your country has one of the most important players in the world about what is digital, this American moment. I think I asking to you, how you think that this infrastructure incentive, digital, could be an important incentive for investment in those sectors that we have mentioned before, about telecommunication, that you have an important player, tourism, that you have an important sector, logistics. You can imagine what is the logistics within the United States and Mexico. Food security, probably for the demand side for Mexico, that is different for the South America. But however, all of these technology are important in this sector. How you think, and how has to be the incentive to elaborate it? I think the country is doing an enormous force on that. But what do you think you can say about this point?
It is of paramount importance. As you mentioned before, technology is not a sector by its own, but it's across sectors. You can't think about education without digitalization. You can't think about logistics without improving with technology, financial services, agri-tech. And for that, the evolution of the infrastructure to support 5G, for example, that is also coming to Mexico, that is really what enables all of these other sectors to thrive and to disrupt into new business models in which to better serve the population with technology. So I think I see it two ways. The first one is the opportunity itself to invest in this infrastructure through private projects that are now allowed by regulation, and there are companies. We actually have a company in our pipeline of a potential investment opportunity that it's consolidating all of these digital infrastructure needed for the future. That is one thing by itself, but then the other one, which is even more important than that, it's how do new business models change in all these other sectors that have been mentioned, given that new infrastructure and digital world that we're living, and that it is going to evolve at a much faster speed than what we have seen in the last 5, 10, or 20 years. And that, I think, it's of paramount importance for me. I think, as I mentioned before, you cannot think of any of these businesses or sectors without taking into account the digital revolution that it's occurring.
Much, Alejandro. I think it was a very great panel. Thank all of you. Thank for I like very much what Jamal said about we have a lot of appetite. I think it's very important. But not only appetite for investing, but appetite for globalization and multilateral relations. That is your country, Jamal, is a very important player on that side. And I'm very happy to have on the side of Latin America young people, young people working in the area to creating firms, to create an investment, to attract investment, to create a new type of thing. That is very important. I think this panel, in those sense, was very crucial, a very terrific, I say, because we have this opportunity with new generation, with the new dialogue in the thing. I think we have the good combination, appetite. We have new way to think, a positive view for the young generation. That is very important. And we have to rebuild this world in how United Nations said, building back better, with new investment, with new quality of life, with less poverty, with less equality. And foreign direct investment is really a vehicle for that, an important vehicle for that. And we need to, like Latin American country, more diversification, manufacturing, and so on. And I think this aligns, this process, this connection between our amphitryon is really important. I closing with this remark. I hope that the next time this meeting is going to be in this fabulous country that is UAE, and really to be there. And for me, it's going to be a pleasure, and for ECLAC to support them, as always, is going to be an important meeting. I close the meeting. I give the floor to Davo Shensawi, that he is the president of the committee of IM. And clearly, Davo, friend, you have the floor. Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mario. I would like, first of all, to thank Mr. Mario and thank the team, the distinguished speakers, to be part of this distinguished webinar. Thanks also to our regional director of AIM, Ms. Astrid. I think I really learned from what the speakers have been identifying different opportunities in Latin American countries. And we see that basically Latin American countries are basically a land of opportunities. You have mainly opportunities in all the sectors, not only agriculture, but also technology, as well as basically aviation, artificial intelligence. So many sectors that I think investors from around the world can look at it. We use annual... Sorry? Is my voice is clear? Okay.
Yes,
and we would like all the Latin American countries, officials, investment promotion agencies, and all the investment companies to look at the annual investment meeting as basically a landmark for their showcasing their investment opportunities. And we serve basically from Mexico City as our regional offices there to support any Latin American companies to enter the UAE market or the Gulf market or Middle East market. Our role is basically to enhance the investment as well as networking between Latin American countries and between basically the companies and investors from this part of the world. UAE, under the umbrella of Ministry of Economy, and also thanks to Mr. Jamal, the General Director of UAE Investment Council, we support Latin American companies to really look into networking with UAE companies. And we'd like to basically maybe initiate UAE Latin American investment network to basically support all the companies from Latin Americas to enter the markets. From my position here in United Arab Emirates and in the annual investment meeting, again, I would like to thank all the participants, all the delegates into this webinar, and we'll be very happy to support any of the investors looking into investment in both regions, in UAE or in Latin America, to network and to really facilitate the investment together. Thank you very much all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dagood. To all the panel, I would like to thank you for your presence, for giving us your experience and your time and your perspectives. And to all the 291 people that connected, thank you very much for listening to this panel, to this experienced and seasoned panelists, and for being here with us. And well, thank you also for interacting in the exposition, in the exhibition room, because numbers look quite well. The link to today's video will be sent to you via email. We're also conducting a short survey to get your feedback on today's webinar. Our next session is scheduled for August 25th to 2020. It's going to be at 7 p.m. Dubai time, and it's also part of the Latin America chapter. It is being organized in collaboration with the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, and will be conducted in Spanish. To register, please visit our website, www.aimcongress.com/webinars. Also follow us on our social media channels to keep updated. And well, thank you very much because this session is going to be very important to keep building a proxy, a good bridge between Latin America and UAE, and also the Arab world. And we are very glad to be part of it and to have the opportunity to share all this knowledge, all this information, and well, especially to ECLAC for being our ally today. And thank you all for accompanying us today. Thank you very much. Have a great day in Latin America, great afternoon, evening in the UAE.
Thank you, Astrid.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.